Emily had just begun her first night shift at the hospital. Excited for her new job, she walked down the long, abandoned corridors. The hospital was old, with its creaky floors and flickering lights, but it was quiet, perfect for a first night. Little did she know that tonight, everything would change. The clock struck midnight. Emily was on her rounds, checking the rooms of patients who were all supposed to be sleeping. As she walked, she noticed a door slightly ajar. It was unusual. No patient should have been in this room. Curiosity got the better of her, and she pushed the door open. The moment she stepped inside, a chill filled the air. The temperature had dropped drastically, and the usual sterile smell of the hospital had been replaced by a musty, old scent. Something was wrong. Her eyes scanned the room. There, on the walls, were strange, almost indistinguishable marks. At first glance, they appeared to be nothing more than stains. But upon closer inspection, Emily realized with horror that they were handprints, large, dark, almost burned into the walls. As she focused on them, she noticed that the marks seemed to shift ever so slightly, as though they were still wet, still leaving their imprint. Suddenly, a piercing scream echoed from the hallway. Emily froze, her heart pounding in her chest. The scream was loud, full of agony, but it wasn't human. It sounded unnatural. She whipped her head around, searching for the source of the sound. There was no one there. The hallway was empty. Silence fell again, heavy and suffocating. She turned back toward the room, and that's when the door slammed shut behind her. Emily jumped, her breath catching in her throat. She scrambled for the doorknob, but the door wouldn't budge. Panic began to rise in her chest as the room grew colder by the second. Then she heard it, a whisper, so faint at first that she thought she imagined it. But it wasn't just one whisper. It was dozens, thousands, all saying the same thing in unison. Emily, Emily. Her body went rigid with fear, but she couldn't move. The air felt thick, as if the very walls were pressing in on her. Then, from the darkest corner of the room, a shape began to form. At first, it was only a shadow, a tall, twisted silhouette, but it quickly took on a more horrifying form. It was humanoid in shape, but something was terribly wrong with it. Its skin was pale and decayed, like the corpse of someone long dead. Its eyes, glowing a blood-red hue, stared directly at her, filled with malice. The creature took a slow, deliberate step toward her. Each movement it made was unnatural, like it was gliding across the floor rather than walking. Emily's heart raced as she backed away, but the door remained stuck, and the creature continued to advance. Suddenly, the lights flickered, then went out completely, plunging the room into pitch blackness. The only sound was Emily's labored breathing. She could feel the coldness surrounding her, the suffocating dread that clung to the air. A sharp, dry whisper curled in her ear, so close she could feel the creature's foul breath. "You will stay with me. Forever." Emily screamed and ran toward the corner, desperately trying to break free. Her hands scrambled against the walls, her heart pounding as the creature's glowing red eyes bore down on her. She turned to look for an escape, but before she could make a move, a massive, rotting hand shot out of the wall and grabbed her wrist. The fingers were long, unnaturally stretched, with nails like daggers digging into her skin. She yanked her arm, trying to break free, but the hand held her with impossible strength, pulling her toward the dark, decaying figure that loomed before her. In a final moment of panic, Emily twisted her body and shouted for help, but no one could hear. The room had become a trap, the air thick with the spirit of someone long dead. The creature dragged her closer, its face contorting into a horrific grin as its foul, rotting mouth opened wide. Just before everything went black, Emily saw one final thing. pair of cold, empty eyes staring back at her. The last thing she heard was the creature's voice whispering, "Suffocate with me." The next morning, the hospital staff found Emily's uniform discarded in the room, but no sign of her. Her disappearance went unexplained. Over time, whispers spread through the hospital that something dark still lingered in the hallways, something that never left. In the room, it remained locked, but late at night, if you stood outside, you could hear faint whispers and the cold air that would rush out whenever someone dared to open the door.